Hey, welcome to the official relaunch of my YouTube channel, where I share tips about all things home. And of course, we have our before and after home renovation tours that everybody enjoys. My name is Alice T. Chan, and I'm super excited to have you guys here today. I'm actually sitting here in my new and improved patio space, which I am completely obsessed with. I was waiting for the sun to come out, and luckily, even though it took a hot minute, it is sunny now, and I am so excited to have you here with me and welcome you to this very first episode of our new home renovation tip series. And we're going to be talking about something very, very important today, which is how to plan a home renovation without the delays and the drama. Because ain't nobody got time for delays and nobody has time for drama, right? So I'm sure you've either experienced it firsthand if you've ever undergone a renovation, or you've heard those horror stories about projects that drag on for extended weeks and months and sometimes even years. And that's just not okay with me. So I want to show you how I plan my projects and how you can then plan your projects so that you can avoid all these unnecessary delays, and what I affectionately call landing in renovation purgatory, which there's nothing warm and fuzzy about that, okay? Renovation purgatory is that state where you're just kind of at a standstill. Nothing's really happening. There's no more momentum. Everybody's just kind of wondering what's going on, what's happening next, right? Or everybody's just waiting for what? We don't know. And we don't want to be there. It's the worst feeling ever. So I do want to thank you for joining me and taking the time to hang out with me. And I do hope that you find this information helpful, because I do feel like this is real practical advice that everybody could put into place. Now, if you know anyone who is also undergoing a renovation or is planning one, please invite them to join us, because this is truly information and advice that will save them from ultimately landing in that renovation purgatory state, which nobody wants to be in. It is not the place to be. So let's start from the very, very beginning, okay? Before we do anything, you need to know what you're planning to do, okay? And what that entails is your design plans. Do you know what you want to do? And when you're thinking about those plans, are you planning on keeping the existing floor plan, let's say, or are you planning on changing it up? And if you're doing that work, are you planning on working with permits? Now, I'm not going to get into too much detail about permits, because almost anywhere that you live, there's going to be a building department. And I know locally here, it's called the Building and Safety Department. Building and Safety Department. And because we're in 2018, we have the internet, so we have access to information at our fingertips. All you need to do is Google and find what your local building department is. And on the internet and on that website, it should be able to tell you what your city or your county or in your state, in your country, is going to require in terms of permits. What kind of work requires permits, and what that protocol is, okay? Now, if you're doing just a cosmetic makeover, for the most part, that's not going to be really important. You're not going to need a permit. So if you're, let's say, doing a quickie makeover on your kitchen and you're just changing out the countertops and you're painting, things like that, that's minor. Those are cosmetic. That won't require a building permit. But if you're doing something where it's going to require a little more work, when you're touching plumbing and you're touching electrical, for the most part, you're going to need some sort of building permit, okay? Now, does everybody use a permit? No, and I'm not condoning one or the other, and it's really a personal choice. But I do want you to understand what that means to your project. Now, when you do get a permit, it's going to require that you follow the protocol, and that's going to impact your budget as well as your timeline in a couple of different ways, right? So it costs money to pull a permit, and depending on what it is that you do, it could be a couple $100s to a couple $1,000s, especially if you're doing a whole home renovation. So keep that in mind, because you'll have to take that into consideration when you are budgeting for your project. In terms of your timeline, you will need to account for the days that you need to do an inspection. And you're going to have to be very diligent about planning for those inspections, because you can't just pick up the phone and as soon as you're ready and you're going to get an appointment just like that, because especially not around here. I'm here in the Bay Area. Everybody and their mothers are renovating. Okay. And a majority of these building departments and permit inspections are automated. So back in the day, you make a phone call and they would fit you into their calendar. Well, now everything is automated. So if anybody tells you that, oh, don't worry, I can get an inspector out here right away, don't believe them. Okay, it does not work like that anymore. Those were gone are those days. Now, when there are thousands of people doing the same thing that you are, you go online, you schedule the appointment, they let you know when the next available is, and it's all computer generated. Okay, and you won't know exactly what your time frame is. It's one of those windows again, which we all love. They'll tell you that your inspection is going to be in the morning, sometime between 8 a.m. and 12 p.m. Don't we love that? Or it's going to be in the afternoon, sometime between 1 p.m. and 5 p.m. So just know that you need to be aware of what's on deck during that week or during that time frame. And if you know you're going to be needing an inspection, you need to make sure that you plan for that accordingly. So in terms of when you're doing your project, if you are planning on changing if you're doing permits, you are going to want to make sure that you get existing and proposed floor plans drawn. So if it's very simple, like if you're just redoing an existing bathroom with the same exact layout, you're not doing anything fancy, just changing out the fixtures, you can probably draw that yourself. Doesn't take very much time. You can Google how to do that if you're not exactly sure, but you just draw out the floor plan and show where your existing tub is and show where your toilet is and where the vanity is. You'll have to show where the electrical currently is. And then you're going to put together a plan of what the proposed is. And if it's going to look almost exactly the same, easy peasy. You might be adding in some new light fixtures. You just need to show where that's going to be, and that's enough. Now, if you're doing something a little more complicated, a little more sophisticated, you're going to want to hire that out, because that's not something that you want to not have the city accept right from the get-go, because of course that's going to delay your project, right? So you can hire either a drafter or an architect or a designer to help you out with that. But very simple and is pretty standard. Another thing that I would recommend for folks, that if you're not good at making decisions, please know when to get help. It's not worth it to sit there and agonize and think and continue pondering the same thing over and over again. Okay, because some people, we're just not good at making decisions. Some of us we're inundated with so many decisions on a daily basis. Like, design is one of those things that may require a third party to help you just kind of figure things out. So if you can't figure that out on your own, or if you and your spouse can't come to a decision or an agreement, because sometimes, you have your taste and he has his, and vice versa, it's important that you understand that bringing in a professional at that point is only going to benefit you, right? And it doesn't mean that you have to work with the person long term, but maybe you just get them in during the very beginning to help you make some of those decisions. They can work with you on a consultative basis just in the very, very beginning. They can also help you with design plans and sourcing of the materials, because I know that can be something that people have a hard time with as well. And then they can help you with the full project management. It's not something that you have to do, but just know that it's available to you. And especially when you're kind of at points where things are not really moving along, it's a great way to get that going. And there'll also be that neutral third party and that voice of reason, right? So if you're having a difficulty with getting your plan to be cohesive, or knowing whether or not your plan is viable, and also making sure that your design plan is eclectic, because that's what you planned it to be, not because you can't make a decision and it ends up looking kind of schizophrenic. Okay. So it's really important to know what you plan to do. So that's number one. Number two is make sure that your contractors or your trades that you're hiring know what it is that you're planning to do. Do not assume anything. Spell it out. You need to offer pictures, drawings, do walkthroughs, do talkthroughs, outline everything, confirm everything, reconfirm everything, do check-ins. You're going to be available for questions. You're going to be asking questions. Am I making myself clear here? It doesn't matter how often I go through the plans with trades, it's just never enough. Okay. I have pinned photos up on the job site. I've pinned up floor plans on the job site. I've pinned up punch lists on job sites. You know, it's just something that you have to understand is part of the process. They are not generally the most detail-oriented folks. And the reality is they're working on multiple projects at the same time. So they don't really pay that much attention to what's happening or just one project, what's happening on one project. So it's really important, if you want whatever it is that you have in your mind to be what you see in the end, to be on top of the process. So make sure to ask questions and check in along the way and make sure that they understand and remember what's going on. Ask them, is there anything I can answer for you? Do you have any questions? And it's just so important. So for instance, when you are planning let's say a bathroom renovation, right? Fairly simple, but from the moment you start demo, the very next step is going to be rough plumbing and electrical. Okay. The contractor needs to know what it is that you have planned. If you have some fancy things planned or not fancy things, they just need to know what your plans are so that they could do the correct rough work to accommodate those plans, right? Because once you close up those walls, it makes things a lot more difficult to fix. And then, of course, then you're wasting time and you're delaying things because you're having to redo stuff, right? So, for instance, in terms of a bathroom renovation, with plumbing, what kind of things do you have planned? Are you planning on having a rain shower head because they need to run plumbing for that? Are you planning to have dual shower heads? Are you planning to have a tub shower configuration, or is it just going to be a shower? Is it going to be a walk-in shower? That's very popular right now, where people don't want a traditional shower pan. They don't want a lift. They don't want something to step into. They want to be able to walk right in. Well, if that's the case, the contractor needs to know about that. They need to know about that well in advance, because they actually need to adjust the subfloor a little bit lower to accommodate that because of the water flow. They need to make sure that there's enough of the water can flow that direction. They also need to be able to recess the linear drain into the floor. If you don't let them know that in advance, but you have this idea that that's what you want, you expect them to know. They're not. They're not mind readers. Nobody is. So you need to make it very, very clear to them what your intentions are. Same thing with your electrical. If you're planning to do a heated toilet seat, that's a very popular luxe item nowadays. They need to be able to accommodate for that. Are you doing a heated towel bar? Are you doing under cabinet lights? And what about the type of lighting that you're planning on having? You know, are you just installing a new bath light where it used to be, or are you adding wall sconces? That's really important for them to know, because they need to know where the placement of all of these items are. Also, if you are adding new recessed lights, if you're adding a fan light heater, those are things that you need to actually upgrade your electrical for. It's not something that you just install and expect that everything's going to be all hunky-dory when you turn it on, because if your electric panel can't support that, it's not going to be a good thing, right? So make sure that you let them know about those things. Another important thing to consider is also the height of your lighting, right? Because they need to make sure that the electrical box is installed in the right spot. If it's not tall enough to make sure that it clears, let's say a door or a medicine cabinet, right? What is the point of installing this light and then the door constantly hits it, right? That's not good. These are things that they need to know about. Same thing with rough carpentry work, right? If you're doing certain things that's going to require them to do modifications to the framing behind the scenes, they need to know about this in advance. So for instance, we did a bathroom recently where we recessed a medicine cabinet into the wall. That's right above the vanity. We needed to know what those dimensions are, and not just the overall dimensions of the mirror. We needed to know the part that actually recessed into the wall. So this is something that your contractors need to know for all of the rough work. So the plumbing, the electrical, and the carpentry. Okay, moving on. The third thing that you need to know is that you need to have to have all your materials on site as soon as possible. This is very, very important. There's too many reasons why projects are generally stalled. Not having the materials on site when the trades are ready to install them, and also trades not showing up. Those are two big problems, right? But you need to have all your materials on site for install when the trades are ready, because otherwise they're going to be moving on. Like if they're ready to start installing certain things and you don't have it on site, they're going to be off to their other project, okay? Because there's nothing for them to do. There's a lot of preliminary work that needs to be done in that rough-in stage that also requires having the materials on site, because they need to know what the specs are. Because when you don't have the materials on site, it's going to slow down the project. And it's things that we need sometimes to check dry fits. We need to know what those specs are. We need to do design checks. Not having that material also will cause some errors in the long run, because, you know, if we're not able to access it and see it, and also sometimes having the instructions in order to install it properly and prep for the installation, it's going to delay your project. Also keep in mind, when you order earlier, it triggers the shipment to start sooner. And that means that we will get delivery sooner, which also helps, because then we'll know if for some reason an item is back ordered. We'll also know if it's delayed. And then you can make a decision at that point. Is it, or did we allow enough time that even though it's back ordered, will it be in stock soon enough that we can still keep that particular product that we chose, or do we need to choose another item? If there's delays, again, is it going to still allow us enough time to get it in order to keep the project on schedule? What if it comes damaged? That never happens, right? Things come damaged all the time. You've seen behind the scenes footage of what happens with these delivery companies. They're like basically playing football with all their packages, right? It's a wonder that most things are not coming damaged. So if it arrives damaged, will you have enough time to reorder another one? What if it's the wrong product, right? Or the wrong color? Are you going to have enough time to fix it? I'm going to share with you an example, a personal example. When I was pregnant, I was when I was very pregnant, towards the very end of my pregnancy, I was renovating two of my own bathrooms. And part of it was we were not going to replace the carpet. We were just going to keep the carpet, clean it, call it a day. But of course, at the end of the project, made a decision at the last minute, okay, you know, we might as well just change the carpet while we have the opportunity. And so we ordered the carpet installer had already came and stripped out the old carpet, put in the new underlayment, the padding. All we needed to do was install the carpet. And that very day that I was leaving and the carpet was being installed, the carpet installer called me over to his truck and said, hey, why don't you just take a look at this real quick? And I said, sure, why not? Took a look at it, saw the color, and I knew it was the right color. Looked at it again. When he flipped the roll, you know, it's all rolled up in the back of his truck. He flipped the carpet over and I looked at it. And of course, it was the wrong carpet. It was the right color, but this particular carpet had a floral pattern laser cut into it. That's not the carpet I wanted. So of course, what happens? We've got to return this carpet, get the right carpet to be shipped over. And of course, in the meantime, my daughter decides to come 2 weeks early. And so as things go, domino effect, right? The carpet doesn't get here on time. Baby makes her debut early, and it is what it is. And long story short, carpet got installed later when it did arrive, and I had to live in the guest bedroom for the first month that she was here. And that's how it goes. So make sure you have all your materials on site for so many reasons, right? The other thing is make sure you have enough material on site. Not just have it on site, but have enough material. Now, you're speaking to somebody who hates overages as much as the next person. But the problem is you need it. And the general rule is to have about 15 to 20% more material than you think you need, because not having enough material on site will stall the project. And if you choose not to order the extra material, make sure that that material, when you need it and if you need it, will be readily available. That there isn't long lead times, long shipment times, because you don't have time for that when it comes to finishing your project, right? So let me just paint a scenario for you. Again, let's go back to a bathroom renovation. You measured for how much tile you needed. And let's just say it's a regular 3-wall alcove and you have tiled this side and the big side, and then you've got the return here. And you get down to the very last part of it and you run out of tile. So what happens? Okay, so you call up to, now if you bought it at a local retailer and it's readily available, you can just run out and hopefully they will have enough in stock and you can bring that back. But you need to keep in mind and make sure that the product that you are repurchasing is in the same dye lot, the same color run as what you originally purchased, because every product is labeled with their dye lots, and you need to make sure that they come from the same, because otherwise, even though it might be the same, it might be white, the two whites may not be an exact match. Now, if you are desperate, you might have to deal with it and just live with it. But if you're planning properly, that's the way to go. You need to also, just to back up, when you're placing an order, ask whether or not a particular product is going to be discontinued. That is the worst thing that could happen, is when you need more, it's no longer available because it's discontinued. Now let's go back to our little bathroom scenario. What if you're at the very end and all you need is a little, small little square footage to finish up tiling, but the product is no longer available, not in the same color, and it's discontinued? What happens then? Are you going to start all over? It's a dilemma. I hope you understand that. So make sure that you have enough material on site, because not having enough causes issues. And also, I wanted to just go back a little bit to what we talked about, having the materials on site earlier, that it also helps you make sure that you know exactly what is needed to make the installation a success. Right. So for instance, there was a project that we worked on and they wanted floating shelves. Now we kind of came into the project after the fact. There's a long story on that one. But by the time we installed the floating shelves, we realized that there wasn't enough studs in the back, behind the walls, to actually accommodate the shelving. Now I find out after the fact that this was already brought to his attention before and he chose to ignore it. So when we went to install the floating shelves, there wasn't enough support to make sure that the shelves hung properly and could accommodate the weight. So these are things that you need to let your contractors know well in advance so that we don't run into those issues in the end. Okay, so the very last piece to make sure that your renovation ends up happening without any delays and without any drama, the biggest and most important part, I cannot stress this enough, is your schedule. This is something that you can do all this pre-planning, but when the contractors are on site and demo occurs, that's when the clock starts ticking, right? And I don't know about you, but I know I don't particularly love living in a renovation job site in a construction zone. It is no fun. Just know that it's going to be dusty and dirty. We understand that. But the least amount of time that you have to live in that state, the happier you'll be. Trust me on that. And the only way that you can make sure that that's going to happen is that you have a timeline figured out between yourself and your construction team. This is going to be a collaboration. You would think that every contractor would sit down and put together a construction schedule for you. I've never had anybody volunteer this with me. I'm the one that always does this for my clients. So you need to sit down and figure out what's going to happen and when. This will help you understand when certain things need to be on site, because you won't have any downtime if you know this and you have the materials available. And then this is also going to help the contractor know who needs to be scheduled and when. And it's also going to let you see in a bird's eye view when an inspection is needed and when it should be calendared. Okay. So let's refer back to our bathroom renovation, where you start with demo. The very next thing is going to be rough plumbing and electrical. Okay. So you'll need to schedule that, and making sure that you have your plumbers on track. And then you also have your electrician on deck. Okay. And because if it's a bathroom, it's probably a fairly small space, you can't have the two trades in there at the same time. So you do the demo, you schedule your plumber to be in there. Maybe they're in there for 2 days, and then you have your electrician in there. They're in there for another 2 days. Right after that, you're going to need an inspection. So already you know, demo was 2 days, plumbing was 2 days, electrical was 2 days. That's 6 days. So you're about a week out. So almost from the day that you start your demo, you need to be scheduling that inspection already to not have too much downtime. So that's already one part. And then right after you do the inspection, let's hope that you pass your inspection, right? Because that's another thing. If you don't pass, then you've got to make the corrections, and then you got to schedule the inspection again. And then if once you do pass, then the next thing would be doing waterproofing and putting up drywall. And right as soon as that's done, you're going to need to schedule another inspection. So as you can see, there's a lot of activity happening one right after the other. So if you're not aware of it, and if you're not planning for it, then there's a lot of dead time, right? So if you can't get it, if you wait, because a lot of times I will tell you, contractors wait until the very end when they're done with a project before they schedule an inspection. That is not the way to do it, because let's just say they finished rough plumbing and electrical. They didn't schedule the inspection until after they were done. But then now your schedule is a week out because you couldn't get an inspection until a week from now. So that's a whole another 5 business days, 7 days, whatever the case may be, that they can't do any work, because you can't continue the project until you pass that inspection. And then the same thing goes for as soon as they do that next part. If they don't plan for it in advance, you're going to be delayed again. So do you see how that works? It's really, really important to put together this calendar. You have your contractors and your trades sit down with you and tell you exactly what's going to happen when. And if they have a project manager, or if you have a project manager, that's their job. But otherwise, if you're the project manager, then it's your job to make sure they are staying on schedule. And also, it helps you to see everything kind of laid out so that you can adjust things accordingly. Just remember, contractors, they're workers, basically. They're not the designers, and they're not good at, like I said, the detailed stuff. And this is why I'm explaining to you what I do for my clients, so that you're aware, so that you could do it for yourself. You save yourself a lot of time and a lot of headache and a lot of sitting around going, dude, what is happening? Why is nothing happening this week? That's really frustrating. Just remember, I know a big mistake that people make is that they think their general contractor is their project manager, and that's generally not the case. So it's really important that you keep in regular communications with your trades. It's really important that you keep checking in with your trades, following up with the materials that you ordered, and those inspections, making sure that they're scheduling them early enough and attending them and passing them and making the corrections as they're being called out. So just so you, now that I've kind of gone through the whole process with you, you know how you can plan your renovation to avoid those unnecessary delays and drama, right? You need to know what you plan to do. You need to make sure that your contractors and your trades know what these plans are, like to the T. You need to, in detail, have all your materials on site. Make sure you have enough material on site. And then you want to create a schedule with your construction team to make sure that everybody understands what's happening when. Because when you see that all laid out, then it all makes sense. And you also have a start date and you have a potential end date. And then if things get adjusted, you can move them around. I love a big calendar with the Post-it notes. You can adjust things accordingly. But if you don't know, and it's just kind of airy-fairy out in the ether, like something's going to happen today, I don't know exactly what that is, and it's like you're constantly wondering, like, why isn't there anybody at the house? Who's supposed to be here today? Having this plan makes it so much more clear for everybody, and it makes everybody understand what is expected. So now I've created a home renovation planning checklist to help you kind of stay on track. You can download that for free by clicking the link. I'm going to plug it into the chat here for you. It is available at realhousesofthebayarea.com / I'm going to put it in here. Area.com / HRP. That's home renovation planning checklist. I'll put it right there. You can download it, and hopefully that's going to help you understand now what's totally needed to ensure a project goes smoothly, right? This is not exactly the fun part of a renovation, but you see how important it is not to wing it and pray for the best, because that's just not how it's done. So I would love it if you would leave me a comment and let me know which tip you found to be the most helpful. Make sure you download the free checklist. And if you find this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and leave me a comment so everyone knows how valuable it is. And this also helps me know that you want more videos like this. I would love your feedback on what kind of home renovation questions that you have, so I can help create those videos to answer those questions for you. I want to thank you so much for joining me. Honestly, I really enjoy sharing what I know and hopefully sharing information that's not always talked about. These are not things that people share. And this is something I feel is really important, because without it, we're kind of running blind. And when it's the blind leading blind, it's not a nice outcome. So thank you so much again. I'll see you in the next video. Have a great day.